the world isn't Instagram, the world isn't LinkedIn. Do what you can. You're where you are. Perform where you can perform. So that's the most important thing, is don't feel pressured by unrealistic expectations. So I think that's a really important message to get out there.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform, where I'm delighted to be joined today. My first ever guest from Luxembourg. We have someone with 20 plus years experience in corporate who's now transitioning into an academic position at the Luxembourg School of Business. So many stories to hear about that background, but also what you're doing right now. Welcome to the show today, Adam Petersen.
Thanks, Paul. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Looking forward to it.
Very much so. And as I say, first guest from Luxembourg. I'm trying to get a few different countries in there, but you're not from Luxembourg originally, no?
I'm originally from England, but lived in 6 different countries, including Luxembourg. And do you know anything about Luxembourg, apart from the fact they lost at football to Northern Ireland last night?
I spent a day and a half there on a recent trip. We came back from Switzerland and Germany with the family, and we decided to go via Luxembourg and spend the night there. Amazing place, like fantastic. Free transport. Everything was clean. Some of the best ice cream I've ever had in my life. With a huge amount of history, but with like some fantastic food as well. I was amazed by the place, to be honest.
Good. I'm impressed you've been here. The 2 things about Luxembourg that are really key, and also key for Luxembourg School of Business and how it all fits together. So it's a financial centre, but it's a financial centre in the business of doing business. So how to get business to happen. And the other thing is it's just a cultural mix of so many different cultures come and live here. So I think that end of 2023, 660,000 residents, so small country, but 47% are registered as kind of foreigners. And that the 53% of Luxembourgers kind of includes people such as, say, my wife, Natasha, who now has Luxembourgish citizenship, who has been naturalized. So really, even though she's a Luxembourger, she's kind of still culturally English. So big mix of cultures here. So brilliant place.
I was going to say, fascinating place. I was blown away by it, and I'm sure there's so much to learn from there. And as you say, somewhere that's doing the business of being in business and helping other businesses perform. So it's right up my alley on that front. But maybe let's kick things off with a bit of background then, in terms of, you've had some amazing experiences, amazing journey to get you are today. Maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I feel very lucky, and if I think about why I'm joined the Luxembourg School of Business and why they value my skills, so I'll touch on a couple of points. One is, the business of business. We want to scale banks and enable banks to operate on a global scale. If I think about what I did, I previously worked in Amazon on the logistics side, and everything you do in Amazon has to be scalable. They deliver, we deliver, they deliver. So many parcel, it is unbelievable, and such a company that is growing so fast. So everything you do has to be scalable. So that's a really, really important thing. And then the other thing is just the cultural mix. If I think about where I've lived and worked, and I'll touch on a couple of stories as I go through. One of the teams I led in Scotland, actually, there was a team of about 20 that were kind of in the meeting that I would chair. And out of those 20, 11 different nationalities. Right. And in my team in Luxembourg, there were about 20 people went through my team, and 13 different nationalities. So just like an absolute mix of people. And I actually held my first lesson this week for the new bachelor's program. And I asked the students to go and stand in the groups of their nationalities. And they're all stood around. I thought, they've not heard the instruction. What are they doing? And loads of them stood on their own. And I went through, and in a class of 30, there were 20 different nationalities. So an incredible cultural mix, and a great kind of opportunity. So yes, very good. So I guess how I got here, to kind of race through. And one thing I really like, so you do this podcast, which is kind of a bit of a long form, but then your shorter kind of lessons from F1, those little 7-minute snippets, which are perfect for when I'm unpacking the dishwasher. And that made me think of a post I put on LinkedIn a few years ago, which were the 3 stories that I've learned from people. And people were posting on what they'd heard from, Steve Jobs and all these kind of people. And I thought, these people have never met them. I want to put some posts, some stuff I've learned from, in inverted commas, real people.
Right.
So 3 kind of posts I put there. So I started off in London with a multinational energy company, went offshore, then I went to Russia, and I realized I was getting something wrong there. Because there was one, I was there working and I was traveling out to the regions, out in a town called Izhevsk, where Kalashnikov lives. And we we were out one evening, and one of the translators, we'd been bowling and, had some food. They said, we've got talking. They said, you're really friendly. I didn't think you were friendly. I said, why do you think I was friendly? And the thing I was getting wrong, because I was, mid to late 20s, super, super keen. I was always thinking about what I was doing. And my face was kind of being so focused that they didn't want to disturb me. They didn't want to interrupt me. And then I went from that role into being, call it an executive assistant, effectively a chief of staff for the head of upstream operations. And it was a really stressful time. We were trying to implement the Baker Panel report, really stressful. And one of the administrative assistants turned to me and she said, Adam, you'll catch more bees with honey. I think it's actually bears. I think I misheard it, but you'll catch more bees with honey. I was like, what do you mean? He said, smile. It'll make a difference. And then suddenly I realized that, oh my God, it made such a difference. And you get those times when you're at work and, you'd be there as a leader and you're working away and someone comes up, you're kind of stressed, you're trying to get something done. And someone comes up to you and say, have you got a minute? And before that, I'd be kind of, no, can't you see I'm busy? Whereas you'd suddenly realize that, no, if you do that, you shut down communication. Yep. The interpreter, the translator in Russia, wasn't talking to me because my demeanor was shutting down communication. So, you've got to learn to kind of go, quick, deep breath, smile. Yes, I am busy, but whatever you've got is more important. You're my priority. How can I help? And that way, you start to open up communication. And then taking that further into, what people want from you. If I think about when I started at Amazon and you go in and they're really good, they have a one-to-one with everyone every week in your team. And they would sit down and the first one-to-one, they'd want to tell me like what they're doing and I'm really good and I'm doing this and it's really great. I'm thinking, I've just arrived. I don't know what's going on. It's like that. Sit down, right. I get that. You're going to deal with the business. Please, tell me about you. What's your goal? What's your career goal and how can I help? I wasn't going to make a difference on a day-to-day in what they were doing. I'd only just arrived. I didn't know what was going on. But by building that relationship, by kind of catching that bee with honey and saying, look, what do you want? What do you want? Suddenly, you can start to build a much better and quicker relationship. And then they'll do all the work. They'll do what they want, knowing they're confident, they're comfortable and confident that you can support them. And that's your job as a manager, is to support them do their work. So I don't know if that, if you've had any similar kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I've written it down. I love scribbling a few of these notes down, but it's smile. It'll make a difference, because I think, the way in which as a leader, in whatever position you're in, how you react to somebody who has taken the time to ask for your time. Yes. And I think you forget that your situation is not their situation. You might be busy, you might be stressed, but they're coming to you with their own problems, and they don't want, they don't deserve, in fact, you burdening them with your problems. Yeah. It's like, I can, but I'm really busy and I've got all this stuff going on. Well, that's not for you to burden upon the people in your charge. It's a case of, how can I help? What can I do? And if it is a case that I've only got 1 or 2 minutes, I've only got 1 or 2 minutes, but I will dedicate those to making sure. So let's be quick and make sure we get to a response to help you. I think there's different ways which you can deal with people that will help them actually engage with you and help them to actually get the answers for themselves in a lot of ways.
And there's a really good point you made there. You made the point of burden. And the next piece of advice I got actually helped me as a manager unburden myself. So I went from, so I'd been to Russia, back to London. Then I was living in East Yorkshire, joined this team, and my team that I was inherited they would live onshore, and then they would fly on helicopters every day to unmanned platforms offshore to operate, to do the maintenance on the gas platforms. And I got there, and the guy, Jerry Leach, oh, it was Julie Holman, actually, who said the first piece of advice. Jerry Leach said to me, he said, Adam, your job, it's about making the least wrong decision. Oh, that's like the most nonsense comment. That's the most nonsense. That doesn't make any sense. And I thought about it. I understood what he meant after a while, because the problem there was we would be flying 8 to 10 people in the helicopters offshore every day. But as soon as you get 8 to 10 people on a helicopter with all their gear, and you'd have, rope access people, you're too heavy. You can't fit 8 people and their gear on the helicopter. And then it's foggy up there. You lose a couple of days. And what was happening was they were wanting to do as much work as possible. So they were planning on having 8 and 10 people on a helicopter, plus all their gear, and traveling every day to try and make everyone happy, to do the right decision of do all the work. We were never going to get the work done. And what we had to do is say, right, we've got to prioritize. And my job is to make the least wrong decision. There is no right decision. We cannot do all the work. If we can do all the work, there's no decision to be made. So my job is to pick the ones least wrong. So I was quite brutal, and we only flew a few people on the first day with their kit. We didn't use all the seats because we wouldn't have got them there. And it went from, I think when I got there, I had like a 50% chance of all the plan getting done. And when I left, we were up at 95%. And people initially were really, really angry. But at the end, they were really happy, because I'd learned I can't keep everyone happy. I've got to make the least wrong decision. And one thing that I've felt that, and I use this phrase a lot, is the way it unburdens you later is that if you're in a meeting and you've got a bunch of your reports or people you worked for or with have come to ask for a decision from you, if they all leave the meeting happy, they didn't need to come to you in the first place. They didn't need you to make a decision. They could have done it themselves. If they've come to you and they've left the meeting happy, you've probably got a problem with delegation. You should have delegated the accountability for them, because they're pulling you into conversations you don't need to be in. So once you get into that position of, I need to not make someone upset, but I know that not everyone's going to leave this meeting happy, because everyone's leaving this meeting happy. They didn't need me. So that was something late through my career where you suddenly realize, you can't get a perfect answer. It's got to be the least wrong decision. And we've got a mutual friend, Faris, who talks about FQ, about focus quotient. So it's another way, I think, of saying that you've got to be really prioritized in what you do, and you can't keep everyone happy. So that's the second piece of advice.
I love that, because I spent a lot of time in my time with McLaren and since talking with people about those sort of making better decisions, either data-informed decisions or better decisions in the moment. And there's no, as you say, there's generally no right decision. Or if there is, it would be obvious generally. So it's like, if you've got to make a decision, it's about, first and foremost, make a decision. If a decision needs to be made, the worst thing you can do is not make a decision. Even if that decision is, I'm not going to do nothing. As long as you've decided that's what you're going to do. But I'd love that. I've never heard that phrase before, the least wrong decision. Yeah. I think that flips something around in my mind, at least, and hopefully in the audience, that every decision will be wrong in somebody's eyes. Yes. So to some level and to some scale. So how do you make it the least wrong out of all of the wrong decisions? That's a wonderful way of looking at it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So really happy about that. And then so I went from working in East Yorkshire, and then so I was based onshore, and the team would fly offshore every day. I worked Monday to Friday. Then I worked offshore on a oil facility called Schiehallion, and I was based offshore. So I was working day shift. And then what I used to do was go and sit with the night shift CRTs and just find out what's going on and chat with them and learn from them. There's one chap there, David Barrett, who was brilliant. I learned a lot from him. And almost to prove the point, I thought my job as a leader was to create clarity. By creating clarity, you can get people into action. If you say, let's go this way, people will go that way. If you go, yeah, I'm not really sure, I think we should go this way, but I don't really know, no one's going to move anywhere. So I thought my job was to make everything black and white. If I can make it black and white, then people know where to go. And I had this debate with David, and he was kind of, yeah, but Adam, it's always grey. And we debated it a while, and I realized, you know what, he's right. It's always grey. And a time I got this so wrong was when in the previous job, we were trying to get really good with procedures. And our procedures have been put in place and platform was modified, and they were being kind of out of date. and people were doing workarounds, and there was this instruction, we've got to follow the procedures. And I said to the teams, right, you go in this week, if the platform shuts down, and the procedure, if you cannot follow the procedure, stop the job, do not do the job, right?
Yeah.
So I come in on a Monday morning, and I can't quite remember the amount of gas that we used to provide to the UK network, but it was close to 1% or 2%. Being shut down all weekend because the platform had tripped. They went to the procedure and the procedure didn't work. And I've been really clear, if it doesn't work, you shut the platform down. You don't do the work.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, but didn't you ring me? And I said, well, you don't work on a Saturday, Adam. You don't work on a Sunday.
It's not the procedure.
You told us to wait for you to, you said we should raise it in the next meeting. The next meeting's the Monday. I'm like, oh, but didn't really mean that. So, it's always grey. It's always grey, and it's never that simple. And one piece of advice was, I think this one might be, a Bezos kind of quote, was that you be strong in your convictions, be clear in your convictions, but hold them really lightly. You've got to be prepared to change your mind. You want to motivate people to go in a direction, but you need to be humble and admit that you can be really wrong quite a lot, and you've got to be able to prepare to change those minds. So that's helped me, and Amazon do this in a good way as well. So they have their leadership principles, and their leadership principles are purposely set in tension. So for example, you have one which is bias for action. Do things really, really quick, because that matters. Speed matters in business. Yeah. And then you have one which is high standards. You've got to have high standards. We expect high quality. Well, what do? You can't always do both. And they have this thing, you set tenets, which is in certain situations, you value one over the other. So for example, and the team I had was, overall this customer obsession in Amazon. So if we're doing something in the system which could impact a customer, it's high standards. That trumps bias for action. If we're developing an automation tool to make ourselves more efficient, bias for action, just have a go. And if it breaks, it doesn't matter. So how do you, life is complicated, life is difficult, and it's never black and white, and it's always grey. So.
I love that. And I think there's a couple of things that come to mind when you talk about that. One of them is the fact that if it's black and white, as a leader, essentially all you're doing is giving people tasks. You've given them no creativity in terms of how you're doing things. It's like, this is the procedure. It's black and white. You do this in this way, and that gets done. It's semi-automation, really. It's automation through people. But if you're setting those intentions, and I love that thing from Amazon as well, because you will have conflicting criteria in given circumstances. It takes me back to something we did at McLaren. I did a proof of concept for Heathrow Airport, and it was about what decision do you make to cancel various planes, and it was a predictive modeling tool. It was like, if you cancel X, Y, and Z, then that will have an impact on the on-time arrivals, on-time departures, number of late turnarounds, all this sort of stuff. So it was lots of clever stuff that was happening. But what always stuck with me is what you want to optimize on, as in what's your criteria right there, is different in the morning than it is in the evening. In the morning, you want to get arrivals on time. You want to get them, making sure that people are arriving there. And in the evening, the priority is departures on time.
Yeah.
And somewhere in between during the day. So it's like, actually, what am I optimizing on? What's my priority right now? And I only learned recently that it wasn't until, I don't know the date, but it wasn't very long ago, maybe 100 years or so, where the word priorities didn't exist. It was just priority.
Yeah.
We've made the word priorities, but it was never meant to be there. It's a singular, but we've pluralized it to our detriment, I think.
I heard that recently. It was either on one of your previous episodes or we listened to the same podcast. I'm not sure if it might be one of your episodes.
Oh, brilliant!
So those are the three things, and as I say, I love your things. So when I'm unpacking a dishwasher, I can then I listen to one of those tips. So if someone's had to unpack 3 dishwashers there, hopefully that's enabled them to have 3 tips. So then I went from, I guess, to kind of complete the story. So went from working offshore on Schiehallion, then to supporting Schiehallion from the Aberdeen office, whilst my family then moved from Hull to Oxford. And then we moved out to Azerbaijan. So we're in Baku for 5 years, and then a bit of a change in direction where, to be honest, Natasha said to me, "Why do I always follow you? Why don't you follow me?" So she got the job in Luxembourg, and I have followed her here and been here for 5-6 years. Took a year off, then went to back to BP for a year in Angola.
Yeah.
So worked rotation to Angola for a short year, and then ended up getting the job with Amazon, and then really excited now to be heading towards Luxembourg School of Business to help them on there and all the companies around Luxembourg and beyond.
Yeah, so I mean, tell us a little bit about that then. What is the position? What are you looking to do in that role?
Yeah. So the professor of management practice. So I'm teaching in the bachelor's. We'll be teaching the MBA, also teaching executive education, and the bit of research and area I want to get into that I find really interesting, and maybe you'll have me back in a year's time so I can actually tell you about the outcomes, is that intersection between process and the way companies set process, cultures, and the way different cultures respond differently to things, and technology. And I think we can use the technology to understand how the cultures, and I'll use that word in plural, cultures and process then improve companies' performance or don't. They inspire and help employees, or they actually hinder employees. And whilst I've talked about nationalities, I think that's it's one measure of culture, but there's always different cultures. I mean, you're from, I think, the Northwest, right? And then you were at Durham University.
I was born up in the Northeast. I've lived in
Northeast.
in North Wales as well, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the culture in Durham is very different to the culture in Dunstable, for example. Yeah. And even in Durham, the culture within, the student population within Durham is very different to the local population within Durham. So, I think the dimensions of culture and the way those interact with the way people behave and the way they use technology in knowledge work, I think is super fascinating. So watch this space on those.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And I love that, because I was reflecting on this morning about something. I always tend to focus on the McLaren experience, but because it's so sort of high profile and it was such an amazing high performance environment. But any of the other experiences that I've had working in banking, in sausage making even, and things like that, it's like where there were multicultural and mixed teams, that was almost a given for high performance. It's like, and actually when I've seen teams that are so similar in their culture across the whole business, you can see how they're missing big opportunities that are right there in front of them, but because they're so blinded to it because of their similarities in some way. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really, you just made me think of my experience in when I first got to Azerbaijan, and there was my direct line manager was a Scottish chap, and then we had 4 reports, and there was myself, Azerbaijani, an Indian, and a Italian. So very, very different in what we brought to the table kind of culturally. But the other thing that made us super successful was we all wanted different things. So the way the team was constructed, we weren't competing with each other. So AJ he was brilliant on his rotating equipment, and he wanted to go in that direction. Amal was the reliability, and I was the maintenance. And even though reliability and maintenance are very closely connected, our career trajectories were going to be different. So we never competed, and they were very different. And the team I had, the 20 team of 20 in Scotland with 11 nationalities, I had that team and made a new hire. And the team, to be honest, wasn't, even though there were lots of different nationalities, culturally, there was a lot of kind of late 20s, early 30s, super competitive,
right.
Males. And the addition to the team was slightly older American woman. And just that addition of her into that environment kind of modified everyone's behavior. And just the team then took an extra performance. I mean, they were all great with their own skills, but the way they then interacted with each other was so much better with that addition of someone who thought differently, behaved differently, acted differently. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Brilliant. Some amazing lessons for us all there. But let me ask you a slightly different question then, something I ask all my guests, which is, what do you do to help yourself perform?
Yeah, I know you're going to ask me that. And I'm going to give you an answer I don't think you've had before. So yesterday, to be honest, I was I got inefficient halfway through the day. So to help myself, I went on a bike ride. So I went out on the bike for an hour. But the reason I actually don't love that question is because you only ever get Instagram answers. Like, I've just given you an Instagram answer, right? I'm on this podcast at the moment, like I'm living a bit of an Instagram life, like, things are cool. I think it can sometimes set unnecessary expectations. So whilst I can do that now, we moved here for Natasha's career, so she's doing well, she's fulfilled. My kids are doing well here. They're not having problems at school. I'm in Luxembourg, transport's free, as you say. It's a lovely little town. I'm 5 minutes I'm into the center, 5 minutes I'm into the countryside. Like, it's an easy place to live. If I think about when I was 15 years ago, and maybe some of your listeners are in this situation, I was working up in Aberdeen. The kids were down with Natasha in Oxford. Your kids were young. It was tough for her because our lives she'd been following me around, and the impact on her career, the impact on our relationship. I didn't feel I was doing well enough at work. And what worries me is that, the unfair expectations. So if you think about, you're going to work and someone comes in with LinkedIn and all these things nowadays, they kind of read this quote from Steve Jobs, and they come in and then say, Adam, I read this quote on Steve Jobs. You're my leader. You should be visionary. And then, the next person comes along and, yes, you should be, an entrepreneurial like Branson. And the next person will come in and, expect you to live up to some quote from Nelson Mandela on compassion. And he's like, whoa, Steve Jobs wasn't very compassionate. So the expectations on you as a leader, I think, are really hard, and it takes a long time to learn. And I'll give you kind of a silly example. So learning empathy is difficult. We just had a conversation before coming on air about how, I was, to be honest, a little bit grumpy because you were slow in responding to my emails. But you've just got back from holiday, your wife's got COVID, your kids are back at school. I need to have empathy with that position. It takes you a long time to learn to see things from other people's situation. And then when you're talking to people would be saying, come with a problem. And then you would have a conversation. And then they'll go, well, you didn't seem very empathetic there, Adam. I'm like, well, why not? You're feeling really empathetic. Like, well, your face, you just sat there motionless. You're like, oh, okay. I've got to learn to show empathy. And the next time we're in a conversation, you're there, and halfway through, someone will say, oh, Adam, like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. And so, I thought you looked ill. I was like, oh no, this is my face showing empathy. It's like, oh, I thought you needed to go to the bathroom. No, this is how and how you learn these things are skills, and they take a long time to learn. And the expectations on people to perform to them are really hard. And, talk about marriage, and there's a podcast I'm going to ask you to put in the show notes, a Hidden Brain podcast, about how the expectations on marriage have changed. So back in the day, people would live in their own communities, and they would have different people that rely on for different levels of emotional support in different circumstances. And now people move around and they see things on Instagram and they expect their partner to be everything. And actually, you can't be everything to your partner. So, you asked me the question, how did I look after myself now? Well, I go out on a bike ride, right? But I'm living this, life's good at the moment. If you'd asked me 15 years ago, when I was up in Aberdeen working really hard, I didn't feel as though I was spending enough time with my kids. I didn't feel as though I was spending enough time with Natasha. I didn't feel as though I was living up to the expectations at work. You know what I did? I would sit and watch an episode of Clone Wars and just turn off and sometimes when I listen to people's answers, they say, you should meditate. Everyone's got 5 minutes a day to meditate. Everyone's got 5 minutes a day to do this and do that. You know what, honestly? Back then, I didn't. I didn't have 5 minutes a day. I remember traveling with, before when I was in the executive assistant role, I would travel. Natasha would be with Tom during the week. I'd come back on the weekend. I would have been in Houston, flying over at night on Friday night, Saturday morning. She would hand me the baby. I'd have the baby. and we used to put blocks, the leg
Yeah.
Duplo blocks, and we would take turns. I would fall asleep in between each block I was putting on because I was that tired. I did not have 5 minutes to
Yeah.
meditate. I would have fallen asleep like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I think we need to be really mindful that, honestly, to help you perform, give yourself a break.
Yeah.
You're living your life at that moment. And if you can meditate, great. If you can do these things, if you can go for a bike ride, great. If you can go and play football, I used to love playing football till I injured my knee because your mind's just so consumed in the game. That's fantastic. But, if you're living your life at this moment, and if all you need to do is just like take a break, then just take a break.
Yeah.
And even people say, oh, you've always got to be grateful for your position because you should be grateful. But sometimes, I've hurt my knee, I've lost my football career, my squash career, but I had to grieve that. That was something that it was the thing I enjoyed most in life, and I could no longer play football and squash. So, I wasn't. Yeah, there's people more injured than me, yeah, but actually, I needed to go through that grieving process and to say thanks for being luckier and being than other people at that moment was just wrong for me. You've living your own life and you've got to live it. So a bit of a, hopefully not too much of a rant, but I just think it's really important that when people listen to this and they listen to how people look after themselves, that it's the advice is for them at this moment in time, and it's not for the people listening. You've got to do what's practical for you. So yeah.
No, that's a great reminder for all of us in terms of and it's not only circumstantial, it's dynamic. It's it's very much a case of what's right today might be very different for tomorrow. Where you are in your career, in your relationships, whatever it might be, that will change. It's about doing what's right for you in that moment.
And I'm gonna fill out the story a little bit as well. And I'll kind of admit this. And in one level, I kind of shouldn't, but I will. And when I used to watch that episode of Clone Wars, so I lived above the Tesco's Express in Dice, and when I arrived on the Sunday night, I would buy myself, a four pack of beer, and I'd treat myself to one beer a night. So I'd go in and I would, so I'd watch an episode of Clone Wars with a beer, and that was just a way for me to turn off. And the reason I didn't say it to start off with, which is like alcohol's a really dangerous drug. Alcohol's a really dangerous drug. And I was really clear with myself that I would only have 4 beers in the house, because that way, drinking on your own can get out of shape really quickly. So, cut yourself some slack. You're living your life, but also be mindful of, whether people exercise, that can get too obsessive and people get unhealthy through exercising too much. So, try and control your environment a little bit so it doesn't get out of control, but fundamentally, give yourself a break, enable yourself to get through the next day in whatever life you're living at this moment in time. But anyway.
Wonderful words of wisdom. I think we can all take on board there. So let's ask a couple of other questions then that I ask all my guests. One is, if you could help any individual or team or organization with the skill set that you've got, who would you want that to be?
So someone who has 2 things. One, they want to change. Someone that wants to change. And then the second thing is, if they are dealing with multicultural kind of teams. So if you want to improve with multicultural teams, then drop me a line, and I'm sure we can collaborate on something. Do some experiments and some research with the business school, and then come up with and really understand how to crack this problem that we face around making knowledge work fun, and not making knowledge work and management feeling like you're just being driven and pushed by the email traffic every day. So that's somewhere that I'm passionate about, and that's where I want to work with people.
Wonderful. And similarly, then, if you could sit down and have a drink, have a coffee, have a meal, go out for a bike ride, even with somebody who you think just having that conversation would up your own performance, who would you want that to be?
I was wondering how I was going to answer this one. I had a conversation last night with a good friend, John Coleman, and I always find talking to him inspirational, and we shared ideas. So it's worth giving John Coleman a follow. But then the other, so that's kind of one very practical answer. I'm going to give you two other answers. One of them is a non-answer of, I think everyone's got something interesting. From those nights I used to sit with the night shift CRTs offshore, and you talk to people. Like, everyone's got an inspirational story somewhere inside them. You just need to build that relationship and find it with them. So, but then it's a bit of a non-answer. But the other person I'd love to sit down with is Serena. I just think she has the most amazing story and is the greatest athlete of all time. So,
no, wonderful. I think that there's a couple of great combinations there. You've got a specific individual for you. You've got that element of just literally sit down with anybody and you'll be amazed at the conversation that you can come through. And then, as you say, Serena, unbelievable success over the years, but unbelievable work that's been put in to go along with that as well. So I think that's a big.
I'll give you a quick example. One of the I'm going to feel awful. Kind of actually forgotten. I can't recall his name right now, but the scaffold foreman on Schiehallion, sitting down with him, talking to him, and the conversation I did not expect that his daughter was one of the best Highland dancers in Scotland. And I sat down over lunch one day to have this conversation, expecting to talk about football or something, and then having this conversation about this world of Highland, youth Highland dancing that I'd never expected to have. And it's like, whoa, I've really learned something. So you can always find something inspirational from someone. And this, the guy was the scaffold foreman. He was, kind of very gruff as if he was you call a casting company and say, send me a scaffold foreman. He's the scaffold foreman, right? But then for him to be so passionate about girls Highland dancing was just one of those surprises that you get that's super fun.
Yeah, everyone's got a story, as you say. So if you were to leave the audience today just thinking about one or maybe one or two key thoughts, one or two key reflections that you've picked up over the years, what would you want people to leave this conversation thinking?
So the one thing I want people to leave the conversation with most is, the world isn't Instagram, the world isn't LinkedIn. Do what you can. You're where you are. Perform where you can perform. So that's the most important thing, is don't feel pressured by unrealistic expectations. So I think that's a really important message to get out there. And then the one that if I could pick one of the other three that I'd leave someone with, it's Julie's advice to me of you get more bees with honey. Yeah. And you've even got a honeycomb behind you, right? So you could even put that slogan right on the bottom of your board.
I'll see what I can catch. That's wonderful. And so if people want to find out more, or if people want to get in contact, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, the best way is LinkedIn, Adam Petersen. So it's Petersen. Although I am English, my family goes back through Norway to Denmark, so Scandinavian spelling.
Oh, wonderful. And as always, we'll put some things in the show notes there, those links to how to get in touch with Adam, how to see, keep an eye on the research that he's doing and the amazing work there, and also some of those other links to other people and other podcasts that you mentioned as well. So I'll make sure all of that is in the show notes. So just go down and see in those show notes so you can follow that straight through. But it's been so insightful and inspiring, and really enjoyed this conversation. So thanks so much for being on the show today, Adam Petersen.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Hopefully we'll have another one in a year's time. Thank you.
Precisely. Cheers. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.